Well, good evening, everyone, and happy Thanksgiving Eve for those that are getting ready to participate here in the United States. I know other places around the world, they celebrate it on different days and different times than we do here in the States. Somebody give me a thumbs up. Make sure you can hear me pretty good in the chat. Uh, I'm coming on a little at a special time today because there's been some information that's been circling around the internet and especially on a number of Facebook groups that I feel needs to be addressed right away. It's one thing to catch the headlines of how they're framing it, but I just want to just put a little more detail. As I always say, the devil's in the details of what's going on. So I want to explain it pretty much. Well, first of all, we're going to get one of our sponsors out of the way to get started. I don't want to keep you up late tonight. That's why I came on this early, right behind Herman and Lawrence. And I appreciate all the information they bring forth every Wednesday. And they are very detail-oriented in their approach to all the information they provide. So a tip of the cap to them. But my first sponsor is with Air Data. I've been with Air Data for about 2 years now as a sponsor of my show. So we're going to go ahead. If you want to get the good stuff, go with Air Data.
When your flight data matters.
All right. In case you missed it in that quick little clip, if you're interested or you're about to renew your Air Data account, make sure that you use my promo code Recovery1Drone20. That'll get you a 20% discount on your renewal. It's best to use it if you renew for a year at a time. That's when you'll see the significant difference in your overall cost from there. Now, what has been circulating across the internet for the last day or so is this new article by I don't say his last name, Kestelou, of Drone XL. And basically the big, I would say the headline of this article is the GOP senators break with DJI Hawks as December ban deadline looms. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and read it. There's the page that it's on has a lot of ads, so I don't want to get in trouble of showing somebody else's stuff. So I'm gonna read into it. So just bear with me as I go through reading all this information here. State starts off as Republican infighting over Chinese drone restrictions could determine whether DJI survives in the American market. Capitol Hill push by GOP China hawks to impose new restrictions on DJI is facing unexpected resistance from Republican senators who warned the company's drones have to become critical tools for U.S. farming and energy firms, according to Politico. Politico was the one who originally put this article out. So you can see another article from Politico.com if you want to read their version. The split comes just 27 days before DJI faces an automatic addition to the FCC's covered list on December 23rd. The Senate strips DJI's provisional from the defense bill. This is what we talk about Stefanik's involvement. Representative Elise Stefanik secured DJI restrictions in the House version of the must-pass National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA. But the Senate Armed Forces Service Committee opted against including the provision in their version. As we know, everybody thought it was all great that the actual language wasn't in there, but then they hid Section 1709. And we're going to get to that down here. Now, the two chambers must reconcile the difference in conference negotiations. Senate Agricultural Chair John Boozman, an Arkansas Republican, told Politico he opposes the hardline approach. This is his statement. They are the primary drone maker, which he misquotes that. He said, I would say drones that are being used in the United States at a reasonable price. That is key, reasonable price. Bozeman said this technology is being used more and more. The crux of the problem, Senator John Havel of North Dakota, Republican, echoed the concerns about economic fallout. They go on to quote, they are real cost ramifications for the commercial enterprises, not just farming. Hovind said you got the energy industry where they're tracking transmission lines, rescue and recovery, all these different other uses is something we got to figure out. And now comes our hero out of Florida and Senator Cruz out of Texas. Senator Rick Scott, the Florida Republican champion, a Senate version of Stefanik's language, has run into resistance at the Senate Commerce Committee, chaired by Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. Phoebe Keller, a committee spokesperson for Cruz, told Politico that staff engaged with the proposal but ultimately walked away. This is what happened last year. And their statement is Commerce did not oppose the inclusion of a DJI audit in the defense bill. Keller said staff provided edits to the text and engaged in good faith to clear the language. The sponsors ultimately chose not to engage further, but we remain happy to work with the sponsors if and when they decide to re-engage. A person granted anonymity to discuss the negotiations told Politico that committee staff conveyed concerns about the ramifications of banning drones relied upon by first responders. Scott goes on. Scott dismissed concerns about American alternatives not being ready. He said, this is Senator Scott, there's American companies and there will be, said Scott, a former Florida governor. I'm a business guy. If you told me there was an opportunity, I could figure it out pretty fast. And then we talk about the no agency plans audit before deadline. The legislative battle unfolds against a critical deadline. Section 1709 of last year's NDAA requires a federal security agency, so not just any agency, it had to be a security agency, to determine whether DJI poses an unacceptable national security risk by December 23, 2025. No national security agency has indicated it plans to conduct the audit in time to meet the deadline. If no audit occurs, DJI automatically joins the FCC's covered list. New products would be banned from entering the U.S. market. Stefanik is making the case that DJI exposes America's data to the Chinese government. This is her claim to fame. It is very important for us to have U.S. drones and not have the data be turned over to the CCP, she said. It has been an issue we worked on for a number of years with traditional bipartisan support to protect our information, whether it's the topography of the regions or on the installations or potential troop movements. Okay, this is DJI's position. DJI has spent nearly $3 million on federal lobbying this year, appealing to lawmakers from states and districts to rely upon its drones for agricultural and law enforcement operations. The fundamental point is that this really about data security, Welch said. This is frankly about protectionism and trying to protect a U.S. industry. They go on, the National Sheriff's Association warned against the ban impact on law enforcement. Their quote is, it would have a very significant level of repercussions, full stop. CEO Jonathan Thompson said, it's a little like taking cars out of a sheriff's office and saying you can't use any cars. These are ubiquitous. The government's own track record, even federal agencies have struggled to wean themselves off Chinese drones. After the Interior Department prohibited purchasing new DJI drones in 2020, the Government Accountability Office found the removal of foreign-made drone fleets had significant impaired operations at the Bureau of Land Management and National Park Service. BLM, which is the Bureau of Land Management, and NPS, National Park Service, do not have enough drones for their operations to manage or prevent wildland fires and have shifted some operations to riskier, more costly methods such as helicopters, the GAO says. Okay? And that's the gist of the whole article. So let's get back to where we're at. Okay? This has been circulating for the last 48 hours. And I find it very troubling in my mind. That's why I titled this, are certain elected officials doing the Beltway two-step? The NDAA was passed in December 23rd of 2024. Now we're down to less than 30 days, and now we're just now hearing about the concerns of certain senators. And they're trying to frame it as this is a Republican thing. And some of the biggest proponents of the past few legislations of trying to restrict or ban Chinese drones have been coming from Republican lawmakers, okay? But each time it comes up for a vote, it's been bipartisan support. That means both sides, Democrat and Republicans, have overwhelmingly voted for these measures. And it's just been kept out of language and everything else. And the kicker is, in which I identified this last year, they voted yes on the NDAA last year. So technically, there is not going to be another vote. The vote was done last year. This is the action date where all what they voted on last year starts to go into activation starting this year. So that's what I'm saying, that now these people are talking about, well, wait a minute, hold the phone, slow your roll. It's too late. You guys voted on this last year and knew because of Section 09, there would not be another vote. There would not be new committees appointed. There would not be another review. So the vote is already done. So for you to grandstand and talk about, oh, I'm not sure, oh, what's the implications? These were the concerns that should have been made over a year ago. These are the concerns that should have been talked about over a year ago. But everybody was on that bandwagon, pushing this agenda through, and there wasn't a whole lot of pushback. It was actually the military themselves and those on that committee that said they didn't want to make it obvious in the NDAA, so they slid it under 1709, a small section that most folks didn't read about. And that's why this whole audit thing. Now, today is November 26th. There's no way they can appoint a committee, because that's what they're going to do. They're going to have to form a committee to appoint a security agency, which means you're only going to have about a handful of those folks who are going to be able to take the time to assign members or assign staff to conduct this audit. And we all know nothing happens that fast in D.C. Nothing. Not when you're talking about you got to appoint members. They have to go between this and that. And then whenever they do that, get the report, it has to go back for review until it's presented to the floor. So this little, as I call it, the Beltway two-step, these are just elected politicians who know they've been getting a lot of pushback from people like us, drone users, and industries who use drones, like farmers. Like I was out doing mapping of some farmland over the weekend, out in the deserts of California. That's what I was doing out there. The energy industry, who have replaced using helicopters and fixed wing aircraft because of the cost factor, and been using drones for, I would say, significant amount of years, at least 5 years or more, and it's been more cost effective and more reliable than using manned aircraft. Law enforcement using drones, and I say this when I say using drones, and I want to keep it generic, because I'm not going to sit there and say DJI is all drones encompassed. No, like I said, we have other brands, Autel, and other departments have used Autel drones. Some other departments have used other drones. And like I say, there are some who have been forced to abandon their current Autel, abandon their current DJI drone fleets, and had to take up other brands. So the drone itself is established in American industries. The energy industry, it is established. It is established in law enforcement in certain aspects. It is essential and primary use in search and rescue. So now we're talking about what's most cost effective. And that's all we're arguing about, what's cost effective. Because like you said, there's not been a real audit of any foreign-made drone. Either it be Parrot out of France, Autel out of China, DJI out of China, or anybody else unique out of China, or anybody who's been audited on the physical hardware of their drones. A lot of the software is basically based upon the same software coding. What Skydio uses is the basic core of what DJI uses, basic core of what Autel uses. And like I say, most American drone companies have not even invested in software. They use what they call freeware or open source is the main thing. They say, oh, you use our open source software, which means that is more likely to be hacked than anything else if it's open source, because that allows anybody to write additional programming to it or do additional hacks to it to do whatever they may want to do. So when they say open source, that is probably the lowest level of security that you can have for software for anything. Open source in computers, open source for all other different stuff, because your drone basically is a flying computer as it is a flying camera. So that's why I say, when you see these headlines and everything else, you got to read the details of what's going on. And a lot of these public officials are doing this two-step dance to appease their constituents, to say that, you know what, I fought for you guys. I said, no, you should have been fighting for us a year ago in 2024, in November of 2024 or earlier. You should have been fighting for us to even not let this get into the NDAA. And that's how they play those games at the federal level. They could never get an outright piece of legislation through with the name banning Chinese-made drones by itself. They snuck it in the NDAA, and they even stuck it in lower under Section 1709. So this is what I'm talking about. You have to pay attention to what's going on. And when I saw this article pop up in the last 48 hours on different people's Facebook page and other locations on the internet, and I'm like, wait a minute, let me read this and let me get the gist of it. And now I'm hearing all these people from different states, people who have industries in their state that have been using drones that are part of that industry. And now they got to appease these folks because guess what? What's coming up next year? Midterms. And some of these people are going to be up for re-election. So they're going to be put on the spot about why did you vote this way? And they're going to come back and say, well, I tried to fight it. I said, no, you got to remember, let your memory be long. Let your memory be long about how the people that represents us voted on these type of issues. And don't let them do a two-step around you and say that, oh, I tried to fight for you. I said, no, the deal was already done. As they say, the die was cast, the vote was already done in 2024. And that's why I brought that up to a couple other people in the drone industry, and they told me, oh, take the win. We wasn't put in open language. I said, well, just because it wasn't there on the front page of the NDAA, 1709 sealed our deal over a year ago. Like I told everybody else, they don't have to do nothing. It's going to happen anyway. It was going to happen. And as I said several times on my show, even last December, I point this out. And pretty much every month since, I have been talking about Section 1709. And everybody kept saying, oh, they're going to appoint somebody. They're going to appoint this agent. They're going to appoint that agency. And like I say, today's November 26th, 2025. And who's been appointed? Sometimes you have to be a little bit cynical in your mindset when you try to put your trust in those who are supposed to be representing us. And like I say, $3 million from DJI, bless their hearts. Man, they should have spent $6 million on lobbying. Because how much did Skydio spend? How much did the rest of the American drone industry spend? And they spent quite a bit to pretty much get some legislators in their pocket. And that's basically how it came out. I don't know what interest Senator Scott has personally in the drone industry. I don't know what Stefanik's got an investment. We do know that, the current administration has family members sitting on boards of an American drone company. So you got to look at a lot of things. As I always say, follow the money trail. Who is benefiting the most from this type of, I would say, lack of action? Because they took action. They did it all last year. They took action last year so they wouldn't have to take any action this year. And like I say, when this shutdown happened, I knew we were cooked at that point. 30-something day shutdown just took away any timetable that we could have had as a last-ditch effort. It's virtually impossible at this point to try to say extend it. Because my thing is this. It's buried in the NDAA. If you want to extend the 1709, that means you're going to have to extend the NDAA. The NDAA is a military funding bill. There's no way anybody's going to say, oh, we need to extend the NDAA out another 90 days, another 120 days, another year. Because that affects our military. And nobody in their right mind who's been elected is going to sit there and say, we're going to let our troops go without. That's not going to happen. So what is all encompassed in the NDAA will stay in the NDAA as it was voted on. It was voted as a complete bill. And when they snuck in Section 1709, it is stuck in that bill. So like I say, we need to continue to reach out to our elected officials and let them know how important this is. And I know a lot of folks talk about, create your own story and everything else. And that's good. If you don't have anything else, well, my thing is, because I am a commercial operator, I need to let them understand that this is impacting their communities of where they represent. If you're a person who lives down in Texas, near down there to the oil rigs and other energy type areas, boom, you need to hit them. If you live somewhere where farming, agriculture is a big thing, you need to hit them, let them know this is affecting what I pay at the grocery store. This is affecting my utility bill. This is, as they say, this is kitchen table politics. Because without having drones, utility companies, farmers, whatever else, they will have to pay more money to be able to manage their crops, check on the infrastructure, and that means they have to go back to using manned aircraft because they can't get drones. Like the job I did today, I used my multi-spectrum drone, the DJI Mavic 3 multi-spectrum. I think there's only one American company, if it is one, that has a multi-spectrum camera as part of its payload. So like I said, what are the people, especially in agriculture, that's what the multi-spectrum camera is for, is primarily for agriculture. So what does that mean? They have to go to a more expensive method. And like I said, we talk about LiDAR and all this kind of stuff, because LiDAR is the next step up. And there are only a few American companies that develop LiDAR payloads. And then you got to talk about what drone. And then you got to talk about the software that's going to be needed to operate that drone. Because you don't do this type of work freehand. These are work that is actually designed and developed on a regular PC that is set up to send that information, copy down to a SD card to give instructions to the drone to fly that grid pattern, what camera angle, what speed, everything is calculated to get down to the details of what is needed. Okay. And for that part right there, I'm going to go to my next sponsor, which is Pilot Institute. This is real quick, so you got to pay attention.
The best. You have to train with the best. Pilot Institute.
All right. As I say in that little quick one, if you want to be one of the best, you got to train with the best. And I say I've done my research, and I'm not saying Pilot Institute is better by as they say, heads above everybody else, but I know they're consistent. And when you're doing technical work, consistency is probably the most important thing. So no matter if you're looking for a mapping class, you're looking for a business, one-on-one class, you're looking for photography class, Pilot Institute across the board is the most consistent I've seen. I have spent the last 2 years engaging with those guys at the Vegas drone meetup, and I'm impressed with what they do. Everybody who has taken their courses, I have not heard anybody online or in person who has taken their course and has complained. Everybody said it was laid out, it's straightforward. As I always say, you can't be above your audience. That's what a good speaker knows. It knows his audience, and it does not do you any good, and does very little for your audience if you're speaking above their heads. No one's learning anything, and the only person you're impressing is yourself. You're not impressing the people that you're supposed to be giving information to, supposed to be teaching to. So those are the type of comments I hear from people who have taken the courses with Pilot Institute, that they fully understand the information. It goes at a good pace, which is mostly online, so it's basically self-paced. So you can't complain about the pace because it's on you and everything else. So that's what I say about Pilot Institute. Now to continue on this last bit, and that's why I try to remind people, when you see things online, like I said, we got these magical tools in our back pockets called these cell phones. Look up information. It ain't going to hurt you for the time it takes you to get on Facebook and ask a crazy question and everybody jumps down your throat. You could have typed it in Google and it would have gave you the answer anyway. Because that's where most of our modern day encyclopedia sits in, is in Google servers. So it ain't like when I grew up, you had to get a set of encyclopedias, Britannica encyclopedias and everything. Everybody's got access to that information now. So like I say, do yourself a favor, do a little homework. Don't just jump on the headlines. Don't just jump on bashing certain companies because you saw a picture of a certain drone and everything. Read what's in the article. Become more informed so you can have a better informed opinion before we jump up and down on a lot of these groups, and then you come to find out, as I always say, you get embarrassed by your own statement because of lack of knowledge on your own, lack of doing your homework. So I encourage everyone, do some homework, gain some information for yourself so you can be involved, you can be knowledgeable what's going on. So when you talk to these elected officials, when you write them on the advocacy group website, you speak from a position of knowledge. And that's what's important. When you write letters to these people or you call their office and by some lucky chance you actually get to speak to them, you can speak from a position of knowledge. And that's what's very key, you know, because just like with us, we can smell out the BS, and so can they. If they know you're just talking off the top of your head, they're not going to pay you any mind. And just like a lot of us have gotten form letters back from them, form letter emails back from them, and that just lets you know they don't know what's going on. They just been towing the party line and really don't know what they're talking about. And that's why they give you a boilerplate letter, email sent back to you about thank you for writing us, and sometimes they don't even match what you wrote them. And that's the real sad part. So like I say, we got to have long memories about what our elected officials from each of our areas are doing. Are they actually representing what's in the best interest of where you live at? My concerns here in Southern California may be totally different compared to somebody who lives in Nebraska or somebody in New Jersey. So I say it's based upon where you live at, what's going on in your area, and just like what's going on in my area. And that's why even we talk about these federal people, keep a close eye on your local politics, your county supervisors or whatever they might call them, where you're at, state legislator, even local city councils. You got to keep an eye on them. Find out what they're passing laws on and policies. Somebody came on there, I think it was on Pod Institute's Monday night show with Greg, and the guy was asking about how's he find out about drone laws in his county. And I sent him a message. I said, you can check with your local law enforcement, or you can check what's equivalent to the county clerk or city clerk in your area, because that's where the laws are going to be held at. Either law enforcement is going to have the laws, because they're the ones in charge of enforcing the laws, or it's going to be the city clerk's office or the county clerk's office who maintains the laws on the books. And like I said, you may have municipal codes, you may have building codes, all these different things. They may have information about drone activity in your local area. And I've been seeing a lot of questions from people concerning HOAs and so forth. And that's one of the reasons why I bought my home 30 plus years ago. I didn't want to live in an HOA place, because I had learned enough at that time that when you live in these areas, most of them are gated, some of them are not. There's different levels to them. You can live in an HOA neighborhood to where you sign off on all your rights. The streets belong to them. The property you live on, the only thing you actually own is the actual house, not the property the house sits on. It may still be owned and maintained by the HOA. So like I say, you got to read the details of where you live, if you live in an HOA and so forth. So you flying a drone out the backyard or whatever, you may be in violation of the HOA rules based upon what you signed when you bought it. When you bought to live in that area, and like I said, we have those kind of communities here in my city where we call, we got a whole section in the south end of town, which the city does not maintain the roads, stuff. If they had a power outage down there, we would attend to the emergency situation, but then we would immediately contact the HOA responsible maintenance people and tell them they didn't get down here and fix this, because it's not part of the city's responsibility. And the same thing with sewers. HOAs, sometimes they take over the whole kit and caboodle. That a lot of people just think for granted that it may be the city's responsibility. It's the water department's responsibility, and it actually is the HOA's responsibility to maintain that. Even like some of the parkland that is a part adjacent to or part of a HOA, that is all HOA governed, ran, and enforced areas. It had nothing to do with the city itself. So when you live in an HOA, you need to be very knowledgeable of the ins and outs of what you can and can't do. So like I said, I see a lot of questions like those, and it's hard to help people gain an answer because the fact that nobody else knows what your rules and regulations are of your HOA because they can vary from location to location, state to state, and all that kind of stuff. So, like I said, only you as the one who lives there, you're the one who interact there and everything else. A lot of people try to say, well, just drive outside across the street and fly over. I said, and then you got to worry about that because, once again, what's the intent of your flight? If you're just flying for recreational use, okay, just fly. But if the purpose of your flight is to do video or take pictures of property or activity, like the whole big thing down in Florida was going on, where the guy was filming the ongoing construction in his HOA, and he got a cease and desist letter, and everybody was trying to say, well, they don't control the airspace. I said, but he's flying over their property. And that's why at times you need to gain permission from the property owner to fly over their property, especially you're taking pictures and video of the activities on that property. And I put in the most basic language. If someone's flying over your house, taking pictures of your kids playing in the backyard, would you be a little upset? I'm sure you would be. Because no one gave that person permission for you to fly over their house and take pictures of their family. When I go out to the locations, I did a Walmart facility. I had to go there, tell them who I was. I was never on the actual property when I was flying. I was out in the street, and that's because of the type of setup that I like to have. I like to be able to keep visual line of sight, everything else. I can't do that if I'm sitting on the property, standing next to the building. You need to have a little distance so you don't lose signal, especially if it's a large facility like I was at, so you don't lose signal and everything else, and I can maintain visual line of sight of my drone. So a lot of times you will be flying from off property onto a property area doing your work. And at that point, once again, what's the intent of your flight? If you're coming back to take pictures of stuff that's not yours, you are no longer doing recreational flight. You fall under Part 107 rules. Even though you're not getting compensated or anything like that, if the intent of your flight was not for pure recreational activities, you fall under Part 107 rules and regulations. So it's not always about potential compensation of some type or whatever, or even work for nonprofits, all that kind of stuff. If your flight is not for regular hobbyist or recreational activities, you automatically fall under Part 107 rules and regulations. No matter if you're getting paid or compensated any type of way or whatever the case may be. And that's something a lot of people have failed to understand when they're out there. They're saying, well, I was just flying around. I'm taking pictures of the construction site. Right there, you're Part 107. You're flying under Part 107 because your flight is not just for recreational. Your intent was to go film the construction activity down the street or across the street or wherever else you're doing it, something like that. So that is always going to be a situation you got to pay attention to. I say no more Silverwood Lake. There's always trying to. Okay. Somebody said Silverwood, and Silverwood Lake's about 30 minutes from my house, so that's why I stopped to look what that was. Okay. So that's what I have for today. I want to address that. You'll probably see it on several people's Facebook page. I've seen it the most as far as this information from Hale Costello about these senators and stuff, and they painted it as being a split in the Republican Party. But if you go back, most of the drone bills have been bipartisan, so they can have a split in the Republican Party because there's enough Democrats to fill the gaps. Some of these passed with barely, less than a third no vote. So they can have a split in a party and still get this stuff passed through. But like I said, the vote was done a year ago. So there is no new vote. There's not no new vote coming up. Doesn't have to go any committee or anything else. The law has already been passed and has already been signed off. This is the 23rd of December, 2025 is the date it goes into activation. So like I said, this is Dre, Recovery One Drones. I hope someone has gained some knowledge and information, what I just put out. And if I misquoted something, let me know so we can get it squared away. But if you have any questions, reach out to me. And I'll be more than happy to discuss anything I've said. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.